My thing is, my understanding is that every time Mourinho is at a club, he spends a shit ton of money to bring in new people. Now,
Mm.
Tottenham aren't spending, and that seems to correlate to a large part of Mourinho's success. So, is it fair to assume then that this season will not be as successful as Mourinho expects or as the club expects because they're not bringing in the kind of players, the serial winners, as you put it, that he expects to have in his team?
Well, looking historically, he has, when he was at Chelsea first time round, he then went to Inter. He didn't really spend that much. He just got the best out of his players. At Real Madrid, he spent a little bit. I don't think it was anything insane. At Chelsea, that's where Roman Abramovich kind of started saying, well, what we buy, we got to sell, kind of level the books a little bit. So he didn't really spend that much. Well, he did buy players, but it wasn't what it was like at Chelsea first time round. Then at Man United, I don't really think the board really backed him for players. He had Ashley Young playing at all different positions because the board just didn't give him players, and he still went and won the FA Cup, the Community Shield, and the Europa League. So I think that even though, yes, you're right to say that historically clubs have provided him with resources and assets to be able to go and be more successful, I'm not sure if he'll be doing that this time round, even though I do see why he would struggle to actually be successful and get top four because the Premier League is so competitive, especially with how the teams have strengthened that have just about reached the Champions League. They don't want to be just reaching the Champions League. They want to be contending for the title.
Does that? I've seen another thing that Mourinho says that he said about Mourinho. Sorry, that he doesn't really nurture young talent so much, that he just tries again to just bring in these big names to try and win for him. Was that the case at Chelsea? Like, did he do that? Because he got rid of De Bruyne, didn't he? Loaned out
Oh yeah,
Lukaku.
yeah.
So
He's all about, I think, giving players who have experience so he can have his own back covered. He won't go take a risk by playing a young player. He's definitely had that at Chelsea first and second time round where Chelsea were about going and buying cheap young players, developing them, whether it was, well, it was out on loan, it still is out on loan mostly, but going and selling them for profit. But the better ones keep and continue developing them in the first team. Whereas he sold Salah, Lukaku, De Bruyne, and you see all these players who would have been first
incredible.
as world-class players. So I do think that, but I also think that he doesn't like to take risks because, I mean, looking at his relationship with Daniel Levy, I think, trusts him to do his job. He doesn't really want to interfere. Like, he goes and sits down with him, has a few chats, like how's it all going, and he explains to him like how he confronted Dele Alli, where he's a great player, but he's got an attitude problem. I don't think that he would go and have that with a young player, especially what's his name, Kyle Walker-Peters, is it, the right back, where he had a conversation with him. He's like, what do you prefer to be called in that? And he's like, I don't mind. And he's like, okay, I don't mind, or whatever that joke was, which was really shit. And then now they've sold him. So it's like, well, he was really young. He was like 21, 22, and his potential was quite good. So what's going on? Like, you're getting a backup goalkeeper who's like 33, 34. Don't get me wrong, you got to meet your English quotas. Business-wise, it's a really good deal. But footballing-wise, when you're looking at the future, I remember in 2015, 16, like 2017, I was thinking, oh, Tottenham are the team to fear for the future because they had Harry Kane, they had Son, they had Dele Alli, all these young players that have had this potential to go up and be so good. They haven't really seemed to rise to that occasion. Don't get me wrong, they're all great players, but they're not the players that were hyped up to be a few years ago. Maybe Mourinho is the manager to get them out of it and up to their potential, where they're supposed to be at. I don't know. I just question with Mourinho, is it a long-term fix or a short-term fix? And I'm leaning more towards the short-term with how things have been previously.
I think so as well. Because when you look at, first of all, I think this Tottenham team has just reached its peak, and now they're trying to stop the decline. And without investment in the squad, that's not really going to happen. Or in young players, that's not going to happen. And Mourinho, he's a short-term winner, even though he is a serial winner. Like, he was at Real Madrid, Inter Milan, Real Madrid, Chelsea for a very short period of time. He's there for like 2 or 3 years, I think.
Well, it kind of goes up from the first year. It takes him about a year to settle in, mark his own way. The second year kind of goes up and starts really performing. So that's where he won leagues, trebles, and all the trophies. And the third year, it usually kind of just absolutely goes to shit, where he almost relegated Chelsea. I mean, it's incredible. December, Chelsea were like 16th. It was just crazy.
It was funny to watch, though.
For someone like you, yeah, for someone like me, I was just hiding behind things and not wanting to speak to anyone about football. But Man United wasn't quite as extreme, but it was still, they weren't up there in the top half of the table. So I don't know if he demands too much of players where they just can't keep up with it, of the constant high demands, or if it's a lack of trust. I'm not really sure. Again, we are not really going to be showing these things on TV, even if it's behind the scenes. It's not really behind the scenes. It's just what Amazon are paying Tottenham for, what Tottenham are agreeing to show. I mean, tactics, we are not shown, so we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. Even though we see the boards, we don't really see what is explained out there, do we?
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever the Tottenham PR people decide is allowed. And it's the same thing with Man City. They could have had so much more content out of Man City than they actually got. Like in the Man City series, I think it was like 10 episodes, if I remember correctly, 10 episodes that they played. And they could have got more than that if they actually showed, the players interacting, the coaching in the same way that they did. Because All or Nothing, the series, they do the NFL series, they do the NFL teams as well, and they show they show them coaching and the tactics that they want to use and things. Whereas the football one, it seems like a glorified ad campaign almost, to kind of bolster Tottenham and to make them look really good, even though that's not really. There's so much that is missing that we don't get to see, is the point. And that's a bit of a frustration for me with this series.
Yeah, and this is where Sunderland Till I Die is a little bit different, because they do try and boost their income through that. But what you see is the absolute shithousery that goes on in the background, with the executive board just not knowing what's going on with the players, with their contracts not being accepted, and not really having much control of it. And then you don't really see so much interaction with these documentaries. You see more of the management of side of things, or coaching management side of things, where they are talking to players. And it's like you said, a glorified ad where they're giving these pep talks and they're doing all great. But with Man City, that's how I felt. But with Mourinho and Tottenham now, I just feel like he's coming in, he's having these meetings with his players, and he just basically tells them that they're shit at something and they need to sort it out. Like, it's just straight up front. With Dele Alli, who's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not your father, I'm not this." It's like, well, no shit. Like, you, what are you talking about? Just get straight to the point.
Yeah. And that kind of contradicts his character, because you would assume that he would just get straight to the point. And there was that chat, I would assume, was a lot longer, and he would have actually got to the point, and they would have had it out, and we just wouldn't have got to see that, surely.
Yeah. Again, we are being shown what they want us to be shown. We're not really shown the exact truth, and that's with any kind of media. So got to be very wary of what we believe in that. And I mean, this is getting a little bit deep, but with Mourinho and that, I think just some of his stuff is just pure box office. Where he stood up at the start on his like first day of work when Pochettino got sacked, and people asking if he's going to get the job. I question the legitimacy of that. I question if Amazon just asked him to do that like for 2 minutes, just put a voiceover on the TV or pretend that was happening, and he just stood up and went fuck off, switched it off and sat back down. That's just great TV, isn't it? I mean, what are the chances of that happening? Why would he even have the TV on whilst he's on his first day of work trying to sort out things?
Yeah, it seemed, now that you mention it, it does kind of seem very scripted. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I don't think he would actually sit there and be like, what the fuck? And it seems like...
Give a shit, would he?
No, I think he'd be like, oh, okay, that's the media doing their job. It's just talking, giving their opinions basically on...
And I think what made me quite skeptical of it was when, of course, it was on Sky, like showing them all, and then suddenly when those voices are asking the questions, it's just on his face. It's not on the TV anymore. So it sounded more like a voiceover rather than what's on TV, because what they're asking is just random questions, aren't they? They're not really reporting it. So where did those questions come from? Why would a reporter be asking someone else questions?
Yeah, you make it.
We'll never know. It's only the producers that know all these tricks.